The clock in Reacher's head read 11:42. It was raining. A persistent, cold drizzle, characteristic of the Berkshire region, turned the sky into a leaden gray blanket hanging low over the rooftops. The local train let out a long whistle, releasing plumes of white steam that mingled with the fog before slowly rolling away from Market Basin station. Reacher stood alone on the platform. He was the only passenger to disembark. He stood still. No movement, no rush. Reacher stood 6 feet 5 inches tall and weighed 250 pounds. In a cheap nylon jacket bought at a thrift store in London 3 days prior, he looked like a granite boulder forgotten on the quiet platform. No luggage, no bags, no umbrella. His only personal item was a compact toothbrush tucked in the left breast pocket and an American passport that expired next year in the right pocket. The wind blew from the northeast, carrying the dampness of moss and coal dust. Reacher squinted at the town. Market Basin, a meaningless name on a tourist map but significant in military history. 3 miles to the south lay the remnants of a World War II airfield belonging to the 8th Air Force. He had come to see it, that was all. An impromptu trip. He stepped out of the station. The cobbled street was slippery. Reacher needed coffee. He walked along the deserted main street. The red brick Victorian houses stood side by side like old soldiers huddling against the cold. He stopped in front of a pub with a wooden sign creaking in the wind. The George. Reacher pushed the door open and entered. The interior was thick with the smell of sour beer, stale cigarettes, and damp wool. The ceiling was low. Dark polished oak beams crossed overhead, threatening to hit the top of his head. Reacher instinctively had to duck slightly. His presence immediately filled the small room. The bartender was a middle-aged balding man wiping a glass with a grimy cloth. 2 old men sat in the corner, their eyes glued to a chessboard. All activity ceased. They looked at Reacher. Reacher didn't care. He walked straight to the bar. "Coffee," Reacher said. His voice was deep, resonant with a distinct American accent. The bartender blinked. "We only have tea at this hour, sir." Reacher glanced at the dusty coffee machine in the corner of the bar. He assessed the situation. Arguing would waste time, and he needed caffeine in any form. Tea, black, 2 bags in a cup. No sugar. No milk. The bartender nodded, pouring boiling water into a thick china cup. Reacher took the hot cup of tea, steam wafting into his face. He took a large sip. The bitter, astringent flavor spread in his mouth, activating his nerve endings. Fuel. He placed a 5-pound note on the damp bar top and turned to step outside. 12:15. Reacher continued walking toward the edge of town, where there was a bed and breakfast he had seen advertised at the station. The road narrowed, flanked by meticulously trimmed hedges and stone walls covered in ivy. Silence enveloped the area, only the sound of Reacher's rubber-soled shoes rhythmically pounding against the wet pavement. Then he heard the engine. A low, throaty growl, the sound of a precisely engineered V8 engine. Reacher turned back. A vintage moss-green Bentley came barreling around the corner. Reacher calculated quickly in his head. The car weighed about 2.5 tons. Its current speed was approximately 40 miles per hour. The wet road reduced the friction coefficient to 0.4. The necessary safe stopping distance was 35 meters. The car was 50 meters away from him. It was accelerating. In the middle of the road, about 20 meters in front of the Bentley's nose, was a dog. It was a small, curly-haired fox terrier, pure white, with a black spot on its back. It was bent down, sniffing something in the crevice of the rocks, completely unaware of the 2-ton metal mass hurtling toward it. Reacher stopped. The Bentley braked sharply. The sound of tires screeching on the wet pavement was deafening. The car skidded the rear end, swinging slightly to the right. It came to a stop just under 1 meter from the dog. The animal flinched, let out a weak bark, then backed away trembling. The car door swung open. A young man stepped out. Reacher observed him. Approximately 25 years old. Dressed in an expensive tweed coat, perfectly pressed trousers, and polished leather shoes. A handsome face marked by arrogance and the immaturity of someone who had never had to do manual labor. He had a jutting chin that radiated disdain. The young man flushed crimson. He strode toward the dog. "You stupid beast!" he bellowed, his aristocratic English voice tinged with the smell of gin. "You've scratched my tire!" He raised his right foot. A kick aimed directly at the ribs of the small creature. Reacher moved. He did not run. He merely took 3 long strides, quick and silent like a wildcat. As the young man swung his leg, his weight shifted entirely onto his left foot. That was a fundamental mistake. He lost his balance. Reacher extended his left hand, grasping the collar of the young man's coat. His right hand seized his waist. Reacher did not use force to strike. He used leverage. With a simple hip rotation, Reacher borrowed the momentum of the young man's kick, combined with the weight of his own body, and redirected that force. The young man flew into the air. He traced a perfect 3-meter parabola, soaring over the low fence by the road, and landing straight into a dense thicket of thorny roses. The sound of dry branches snapping mixed with a shrill scream. The young man thrashed in the thorn bush, his expensive tweed coat torn to shreds, his face scratched and bleeding from the thorns. He struggled to get up, his eyes wide open, staring at Reacher as if he had just seen a prehistoric monster. Reacher said nothing. He stood still on the sidewalk, hands hanging loosely, breathing steadily. He looked at the young man, then down at the dog. The dog was cowering against Reacher's leg. It looked up with round, wet eyes. It trembled not from the cold but from fear. Do you know who I am?" the young man shouted, clutching his bleeding arm. "I am Charles Arundel. This whole town belongs to my family. I will call the police. I will have you thrown in jail." Reacher remained silent. He looked at Charles Arundel. He saw a spoiled, large child, a typical bully. The kind of person who only feels strong when the opponent is weaker, and utterly cowardly when faced with someone stronger. Reacher took a step forward. Charles stepped back, 2 paces, tripped over a tree root, and fell backward onto the wet grass. Don't come near me," he stammered. Reacher bent down. He picked up Charles's fallen fedora from the road, brushed off the dust, and tossed it toward the thorn bush. "Get in the car," Reacher said. His voice was cold and dry like the sound of gravel crunching. "Drive away." Slowly, Charles looked into Reacher's eyes. He saw a dark abyss. No anger, no hatred, just a primal, absolute threat. The young man clumsily got up, jumped into the Bentley, started the engine, and sped away, leaving behind a trail of light blue smoke. Reacher turned back to look at the dog. "Are you okay, kid?" he asked. The dog wagged its tail. "Wonderful!" a voice called out from above. Reacher looked up. On the other side of the fence, about 10 meters away, stood a large light blue Georgian-style house nestled behind the old oak trees. On the second-floor balcony, an elderly woman sat in a wicker chair wrapped in a thick woolen shawl. She had silver-white hair, a wrinkled face, but her eyes were bright and sharp like a hawk's. She was looking at Reacher and she was smiling. "That was a nice throw, young man," she said, her voice old yet authoritative. "My grandson Charlie deserved to be thrown farther than that." Reacher nodded slightly, a minimal greeting. "Is that your dog?" Reacher asked, pointing down at the animal at his feet. "That's Bob," the old woman said. "He's the only reason I haven't died of boredom in this cozy prison." "And who are you? You're not from around here." "I'm just passing through." "Passing through and daring to throw Charles Arundel into the bushes, huh? Interesting." The old woman cleared her throat, then waved her hand. "It's raining, and you look soaked to the bone. Come inside. I have hot tea. There might even be some brandy if you like." Reacher looked at the gray sky. The rain was starting to come down harder. He looked at the dog scratching at his pant leg. Then he looked at the old woman. Something was not right. Reacher was a former military police. He had spent 13 years chasing down deserters, murderers, and smugglers in the army. He had learned to read body language from 100 meters away. The old woman was smiling, but her shoulders were tense. Her hand gripped the armrest of the wicker chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She was afraid. Not afraid of him. She was afraid of something inside her own house. "Brandy sounds good," Reacher said. He bent down, picked up the dog with one hand, and walked through the iron gate leading to the blue house. The clock in Reacher's head struck 12:30. He had planned to leave after visiting the memorial, but plans had changed. There was an old woman in fear, there was a bully driving the Bentley, and there was a dog nearly killed. Reacher did not like bullies. He would stay. 24 hours. No more. The oak door closed behind them. The sound echoed like the lid of a coffin slamming shut. Inside Little Green House, there was absolute silence. The scent of dried lavender mixed with the musty smell of old wool carpets. The smell of the past. The smell of decaying secrets. Reacher stood in the foyer. He filled the cramped space entirely. The ceiling was low. The black and white portraits hanging on the walls stared at him with an accusatory gaze. "Go into the living room, Mrs." Emily said. She limped, her hand gripping the banister tightly. Reacher followed. He counted her footsteps. 1, 2, 3. Stopped. Her left leg was weaker than her right. Soft tissue injury. No broken bones, but painful. The living room was dark, the curtains drawn tight even though it was midday. Only the light from the fireplace cast dancing shadows on the walls. Mrs. Emily poured the wine. Her hand trembled. The crystal bottle clinked against the glass. Clink. "Brandy," she said, handing the glass to him. Reacher took it. He did not drink immediately. He looked at the amber liquid sloshing. He sniffed the strong smell of alcohol. He took a sip. The alcohol burned his throat, warming his stomach. "Who are you afraid of?" Reacher asked. No preamble, direct. Mrs. Emily sat down in the armchair, the dog Bob curled up at her feet. She looked at him, her aged eyes gleaming with extreme fatigue. "I fell down the stairs last night," she said. "Everyone says I am old now, senile. I stepped on Bob's rubber ball, but Bob never leaves the ball on the stairs. He keeps his toys in the basket. He is a disciplined dog." Reacher set the glass down on the table. He turned and walked out of the living room, heading toward the foot of the stairs. He stood there, looking up. 16 steps, polished oak wood, a 45-degree incline. A deadly trap if one slips. Reacher began to calculate. Basic physics. If a person steps on a round ball on the stairs, their foot will slip forward. The body will fall backward. They will hit their back and neck against the steps. The injuries will focus on the spine, occipital bone, and shoulder blades. Reacher turned back to look at Mrs. Emily. "Where does it hurt?" She pointed to her forehead and knee. "I dove head first. I had to use my hands to brace myself." Reacher nodded. The hypothesis of the ball was eliminated. When falling face down, it means the legs were held back while the upper body continued to move due to inertia. She did not slip. She was tripped. Reacher stepped up the stairs. He moved slowly, his eyes scanning every millimeter of wood. First step, clean. Second step, a small scratch from a dog's claw. Third step, Reacher stopped. He bent down. Dim light from the hallway window illuminated a thin layer of dust. On the baseboard, at a height of 15 centimeters from the step, there was a small hole, smaller than the head of a matchstick. Reacher inserted his index finger. Rough, just right. That is a nail mark. He looked across to the opposite side at the handrail of the staircase. At the same height, on the third wooden rail, there was a faint indentation. The indentation made by a thin wire, under great tension, pressed into the wood. A piano wire, or a super durable fishing line, tensioned across the step in the darkness. A trap. Reacher felt his heart rate steady at 50 beats per minute, but a chill ran down his spine. This is not a child's prank. This is infantry ambush technique. Simple, effective, ruthless. The trapper wanted Mrs. Emily to break her neck. A quick death, disguised as a household accident. Reacher stood up. He looked down at the nail hole once more. There was another detail. The nail hole was covered with a fresh coat of varnish. It was still tacky, not completely dry. The faint smell of solvent lingered. The murderer had returned. He had removed the nail. He had repainted to conceal the evidence. And he did it this morning, which means he is in this house. Or he has a key. Reacher said nothing. He pulled a toothbrush out of his pocket, not to brush his teeth, but to measure the depth of the nail hole, 2 centimeters, deep enough to hold a taut wire when a person weighing 60 kilograms trips over it. He turned back to the living room. Mrs. Emily was looking at him, waiting for a verdict. "Not a balloon," Reacher said. His voice was low, but it echoed in the silent room. "Someone has tensioned a steel wire. They wanted you dead last night, Mrs." Emily's face turned pale. She raised her hand to her mouth. "Who?" she whispered. "Who has a key to your house?" "Only I, and Laura, the housekeeper." "Where is Laura?" "She went to the market. She'll be back soon." Reacher shook his head. "Not just Laura. Someone repainted the nail this morning. He is very calm, very meticulous, and he is very close." Suddenly Bob barked, a piercing bark directed at the front door, the rustling on the gravel path outside. Heavy footsteps, not those of a woman returning from the market. Reacher glanced at the clock in his mind. 12:45. He stepped to the window, parting the thick curtain just enough for an eye to see through. A black Land Rover pulled up sharply at the gate. 3 men got out, wearing long leather coats. Their demeanor was not that of visitors, the demeanor of debt collectors, or those coming to finish the unfinished business from last night. They looked up at the house. One of them pulled a black metal object from his coat pocket, a pipe wrench or a knife. Reacher lowered the curtain. He turned back to look at Mrs. Emily. "Do you have a gun?" he asked. "What? No, of course not. This is England," Great Reacher said. He looked around the living room, searching. No gun, no knife, just fragile porcelain items and heavy mahogany furniture. Reacher spotted a black iron fireplace poker, about 60 centimeters long with a pointed end. It lay next to a pile of glowing coals. He stepped forward, picked up the iron rod. It was of moderate weight, well balanced, a perfect blunt weapon. "Stay right there," Reacher ordered. "Keep the dog quiet." "What are you going to do, Mrs.?" Emily asked, trembling. Reacher stepped into the foyer. He stood tucked in the shadows behind the thick oak door, his right hand gripping the cold iron rod tightly. "I intend to open the door," Reacher said. The doorbell rang. Ding dong! The cheerful, artificial sound was chilling. Next came the sound of knocking. Bang, bang, bang. Reacher did not respond. He waited. He heard the lock being picked, the sound of metal scraping against metal. Click! The door slowly opened. Reacher took a deep breath. Every muscle in his body tensed, ready to spring like a tightly coiled spring. The enemy had come to the door, and Reacher would not let them cross this threshold intact. The door swung wide open. Cold wind and rain swept into the hallway, soaking the old Persian carpet. The first man stepped over the threshold. He was about 1.80 meters tall, wearing a soaking wet leather coat, his right hand gripping a half-meter-long galvanized iron pipe. He entered with the confidence of someone accustomed to using violence to solve problems. He did not look to the left. He stared straight into the empty hallway. A mistake. Reacher was pressed against the wall, just to the left of the doorframe, in his blind spot. Reacher did not shout. He did not warn. He swung the fireplace poker. It was a right-handed strike calculated with the shortest arc trajectory. The target was the man's right collarbone. The collarbone is the weakest link in the shoulder girdle. It takes only 7 pounds of force to break it. Reacher put 50 pounds of force into it. Crack! The sound was dry like a breaking twig, but louder, more resonant. The black iron smashed the man's collarbone, splintering the bone into the muscle. The man did not have time to scream. His nervous system was overwhelmed by the sudden pain. The water pipe fell from his hand, rolling on the wooden floor. He collapsed, clutching his shoulder, his face ashen. Reacher stepped over him. He walked out onto the porch, blocking the path. The other two were standing in the rain. One was a hefty guy holding a baseball bat. The other was a skinny one with a folding knife. They froze. They saw their comrade writhing on the floor. Then they saw Reacher. Reacher stood there, towering like a watchtower, his right hand holding a poker hanging loosely, rainwater streaming down his face. He was not in a fighting stance. He stood comfortably, his center of gravity lowered. The fat guy roared, swinging the baseball bat as he charged forward. He was slow, too slow. He swung the bat from too far away, exposing his entire front, an amateur's strike. Reacher waited. The clock in his head counted down. 3, 2, 1. As the bat began its downward arc, Reacher stepped forward. He did not retreat. He moved into the opponent's striking range. It was a geometric principle. The closer to the pivot point, the weaker the centrifugal force. Reacher used his left hand to brace the fat guy's wrist holding the bat. At the same time, he butted heads. That was the Glasgow kiss. The hardest part of Reacher's forehead collided directly with the fat guy's nose. Blood gushed out. The fat guy fell backward, dropping the bat, his hands clutching his face, groaning incoherent sounds. The remaining skinny guy held the knife. He stood 3 meters away from Reacher. He looked at the knife in his hand. The blade was 10 centimeters long. Then he looked at Reacher. He observed his long reach. He looked at the black iron bar in Reacher's hand. He did the math. Reacher said nothing. He simply focused intently on the skinny guy's throat, as if he were deciding at what angle to stab the iron bar into it. The skinny guy stepped back. 1 step, 2 steps. Then he turned and ran. He dashed out the gate, slipping on the wet gravel, scrambling to get up and disappearing into the gray rain. The 2 limping accomplices crawled after him, leaving behind the water pipe and baseball bat like pathetic trophies. The Land Rover roared to life, turned sharply, crushing the hydrangea bushes, and sped away. Reacher stood still for another 10 seconds. He listened to the engine fading until it was swallowed by the sound of the rain. He bent down, picked up the water pipe and baseball bat. He went inside, closed the door, and locked it. In the living room, Mrs. Emily Arrow was leaning against the fireplace tightly, holding an empty brandy glass. Her face was drained of color. They are gone?" she asked. "For now," Reacher replied. He tossed the pile of weapons he had collected into the corner of the room. The sound of metal clanging echoed. He placed the poker back in its original position. Then he looked at Mrs. Emily. "They did not come to kill you," Reacher said. His voice was calm, analytical. "If they wanted to kill, they would have come at night or used a silencer. They came in the daytime making noise. It was a message." "What message?" "That you are no longer safe here, that you should be afraid, that you must do as they say." Reacher stepped closer to the window, looking through the curtain's gap. "What is she holding that they want?" he asked. "Not money. They can wait for her to die to get the money. They want something right now." Mrs. Emily remained silent. She looked down at Bob the dog, who was snuggling against her legs. "The will," she said softly. "I just rewrote the will last week. I intended to send it to the lawyer in London, but I haven't had the chance." "Who are you leaving the money to?" "Not to the family," she said, her lips pressed tightly into a straight line. "Those vultures will not receive a penny. I am leaving everything to Laura." "And to an animal protection charity." Reacher nodded. "Financial motive. Classic. Simple. But enough to kill." "Where is the will?" "In the drawer of my desk, on the 2nd floor." "Burn it," Reacher said. "Mrs." Emily stared at him in shock. "What if you die without a will? The estate will be divided according to inheritance laws. Your family will receive the money. That is why they want to kill you, to prevent the new will from taking effect, or to force you to write another one." Reacher moved closer to the fireplace, warming his large hands over the flames to dry off the rainwater. "But if you live, you can rewrite hundreds of other wills. The problem is, tonight, they will come back, and next time they won't knock. So what should I do?" Reacher turned back. His shadow stretched long across the floor, enveloping the small elderly woman. "You do nothing. You go to sleep. Lock your room." He glanced at the clock in his mind. 1:15 in the afternoon. "I will stay here," Reacher said. "I will sit in this armchair, and I will wait for them." "You? Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You owe me nothing." Reacher looked at her. He remembered how her grandson kicked the dog. He recalled the wire trap on the stairs. He remembered the sound of the thug's shattered collarbone earlier. It was injustice, and Reacher hated injustice. It made his orderly brain itch. "I don't like unbalanced fights," Reacher said. "An old woman with a hurt leg, a small dog, up against 3 strong men. The odds are terrible." He sat down in the chair, stretching his long legs out in front of the fireplace. He closed his eyes. "Now go to rest, Mrs. Emily. Tonight will be a long night." 2:15 in the afternoon. Reacher stepped out of Little Green House. The rain had eased, but fog began to rise from the nearby River Thames. A thick white mist slithered over the stone fences and swallowed the streetlights that had yet to be turned on. Visibility dropped to less than 50 meters. Ideal combat conditions for the attacker. Bad for the defender. Reacher buttoned the top button of his coat. He walked toward the town center. He needed information. He needed to know who the enemy was before sunset. He did not walk on the sidewalk. He walked close to the edge of the road, where he could observe both sides and have the quickest escape route. Market Basin is a geographical trap. Reacher realized this after 10 minutes of walking. The town is situated in a bowl-shaped valley. There is only one main road in and out. The phone signal is intermittent. Reacher glanced at the signal bar on the screen of an old Nokia phone belonging to a passerby one bar. Sometimes it disappears completely. If something happens, reinforcements will take at least 45 minutes to arrive. 45 minutes is a lifetime in a firefight. Reacher stopped in front of the local police station, a small red brick building, the door locked tight. A handwritten sign taped to the glass. Open from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. For emergencies, call 999. Useless. Reacher continued walking. He turned into a narrow alley that led behind the row of commercial buildings. The smell of garbage, the stench of rotten fish, and a pungent chemical odor. He stopped behind a 2-story building with a sign that read, Private Clinic, Dr. Jacob Tanner. Reacher inhaled deeply. His sense of smell analyzed the molecules in the damp air, medical alcohol, disinfectant, and another smell, pungent, spicy, like burnt garlic. White phosphorus. Reacher frowned. White phosphorus is not something used for healing. It is a weapon. It ignites upon contact with air. It causes acute liver failure if ingested in small amounts. And in the dark it glows. A ghastly green light. The pieces began to fit together in Reacher's mind. Mrs. Emily spoke of seances, about the aura surrounding her before she fell ill. Not demons, it's chemistry. Reacher turned to leave. A gray-silver Ford Focus, old and worn, screeched to a halt, blocking the mouth of the alley. The engine died. The car door opened. A woman stepped out. She was about 35 years old, wearing a wrinkled beige trench coat, black jeans, flat-soled boots, brown hair tied messily at the back, no makeup, a chiseled face etched with the lines of chronic fatigue and persistent skepticism. She did not draw a gun. British police do not often carry firearms, but she held a collapsible baton in her right hand, ready to spring into action. Reacher stood still. He relaxed both hands. "You're really big," she said, a thick London accent unblended. "I eat a lot," Reacher replied. "I heard a giant American just threw Charlie Arrow into a rose bush. Is that you?" He slipped. The woman smirked, a half-smile that did not reach her cold eyes. She stowed the baton in her coat pocket, a gesture of confidence. She assessed Reacher and decided he was not an immediate threat, or she believed she could handle him. "I'm Hayes, Inspector, Scotland Yard," or "I used to be Scotland Yard. Now I'm stuck in this rat hole." "Jack Reacher," he said. "Former military police." Hayes nodded. "I know that stance." Feet shoulder-width apart, eyes scanning the surroundings. "Are you looking for an escape route or a place to bury a body?" "I'm looking for coffee." "There's no coffee here. Just muddy water." Hayes stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Listen, Reacher. I don't know what game you're playing with old lady Emily, but Arrow is a big name around here. And Dr. Tanner, he's a shark." "Tanner is storing phosphorus in the clinic," Reacher said. "I can smell it." Hayes paused. Her gaze shifted, from mocking to sharp. "Are you sure? My nose has never been wrong." Hayes looked towards the back door of the clinic, then back at Reacher. "Tanner has a license to import medical chemicals. I have tried to get a search warrant 3 times. The sheriff tore up my application all 3 times. Then you need another method," Reacher said. "What method?" "My method." Hayes stared at him. She understood what he was implying. The law of the jungle. Primitive justice. "I am a police officer, Reacher. I cannot support you breaking the law. I am not asking you to support me. I just need you not to get in my way." Reacher looked at the clock in his head. 2:45. Tonight they will return to Mrs. Emily's house, he said. 3 guys. Maybe more. They might have guns. Hayes sighed. She pulled out a pack of cigarettes, lit one. The smoke rose and mingled with the fog. I cannot send anyone for official protection. There is no evidence of a threat. Mrs. Emily's testimony is considered rambling. I am the protector. You are all alone. That's enough. Hayes took a long drag from her cigarette, then tossed the butt into a puddle, her shoe stepping on it. Don't die, Reacher. I hate having to write reports about Americans drowning. I will try. Hayes turned her back, walking towards the car. Hey, Reacher called after her. She stopped, her hand resting on the car door. Tanner isn't working alone, Reacher said. He needs money. Charlie Arrow needs money. It's an alliance. I know, Hayes said, not turning back. And his sister Tessa, that girl is even more dangerous than the 2 men combined. She got into the car. The Ford Focus roared to life, the exhaust coughing before disappearing into the fog. Reacher stood alone in the alley. He had an ally, a reluctant ally but capable, and he had identified the enemy's weapon, phosphorus, poison, and hallucination. Now is the time to return to the little green house. The sky began to darken. The fog thickened. Reacher walked on. He felt the familiar excitement coursing through his nerves. The hunt began. 3:32 in the afternoon. Reacher did not head back to the little greenhouse just yet. He needed to refuel. His body was a massive, calorie-burning machine. After the scuffle on the porch and the walk through the fog, his blood sugar was dropping. He entered a small tea shop called the Copper Kettle, located at the end of High Street. The shop was empty. Floral tablecloths, porcelain plates displayed on wooden shelves, the smell of baked goods and strawberry jam, an atmosphere steeped in English charm, completely out of sync with Reacher's imposing presence. He chose a table in the corner, back against the wall facing the entrance, a standard tactical position. An elderly waitress timidly approached. I need eggs, Reacher said. 4, fried, bacon, baked beans, toast, and black tea. A large cup. 5 minutes later, the food was served. Reacher began to eat. He ate quickly, efficiently, cutting the food into neat squares and mechanically putting it into his mouth. The doorbell jingled. Reacher did not look up from his plate of eggs, but his senses immediately shifted into alert mode. The scent of expensive perfume. Chanel, no. 5. The smell of antiseptic, iodine. 2 people entered, 1 male, 1 female. They walked straight to his table. No hesitation. Reacher set down his knife and fork. He took a napkin and wiped his mouth. Then he looked up. The man was Dr. Tanner. He was around 40 years old, with slick-back black hair, meticulously groomed beard. He wore a camel cashmere coat, looking polished, but with beady black eyes that darted around like a rat's. The woman was Tessa Arrow, Charlie's sister. She was beautiful, a sharp, cold beauty like a scalpel, short bob blonde hair, deep red lipstick. She wore a faux fur coat and black leather gloves. May I sit? Tessa asked. She did not wait for an answer, pulling a chair to sit across from Reacher. Tanner stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, trying to project a threatening demeanor, but failing against Reacher's bulk. You are Jack Reacher, Tessa said. Her voice was low, husky, filled with deadly allure. The man who turned my brother into a laughingstock for the whole town. He made himself a laughingstock, Reacher said. I just helped him find a place to land. Tessa laughed, a short laugh devoid of warmth. You're interesting. Unlike the useless men in this damn town. She removed 1 glove, placing her pale hand on the table. I am Tessa. This is Dr. Tanner. I know, Reacher said. Tanner? The one who likes to play with chemicals? Tanner's eyes twitched slightly. He clenched his hand in his coat pocket. I've heard you're bothering Aunt Emily, Tanner said, his voice trying to maintain a professional calm. She is my patient. She needs rest. Not to hear wild tales of assassination plots from a drifter. She needs rest from the poison, Reacher replied. White phosphorus is not good for the liver, doctor. Tanner's face changed color. He looked at Tessa, a hint of fear in his eyes. Tessa maintained her smile, but her gaze had hardened like stone. She realized that Reacher was not just a muscle-bound fool. "You're smarter than you look, Reacher," Tessa said. She opened her wallet and pulled out a stack of British pounds. Crisp, thick. 5,000 pounds, she said, pushing the stack of money towards him. "Enough for you to buy a first-class ticket back to America. And a new suit. Leave here right now." Reacher looked at the stack of money. He calculated quickly. 5,000 pounds. About $6,500. Enough to live on for 6 months of wandering. He glanced back at the empty plate of food. "I haven't finished my tea," Reacher said. "Finish it and go," Tessa hissed. "Don't play the hero. Heroes often die young." Reacher picked up the cup of tea and took a sip. He looked straight into Tessa's eyes. "I don't need your money, and I don't like the way you're trying to teach me." Tanner stepped forward, leaning down to whisper, "You don't understand, buddy. The fog in Market Basin is thick. The roads are slippery. Strangers often have accidents. They slip into the river or get hit by cars. No one finds the bodies." Reacher set the cup of tea down. Clink! The sound echoed clearly in the empty cafe. He stood up. His shadow loomed over both of them. Tanner instinctively stepped back, nearly bumping into the next table. "I like accidents," Reacher said, looking down at Tanner from a height of 6 feet 5 inches. "I often cause them." He turned to Tessa. "You tell your brother and his thugs to stay away from Little Greenhouse. If I see any of you there after sunset." Reacher left the sentence hanging. The silence stretched for 3 seconds, enough for fear to creep into their minds. "I won't just throw them into the rose bushes anymore. I will break their arms and legs, one by one." Reacher tossed a 10-pound note onto the table covering Tessa's stack of money. "Keep the change," he said to the trembling waitress behind the counter. Reacher walked out the door. Tessa and Tanner sat there motionless. 3:50. Outside, the fog had swallowed the street. The streetlights began to flicker on, pale and weak. The warning had been given and rejected. Now, the spring-'s coiling was about to unravel. Violence was inevitable. Reacher pulled up his collar and walked quickly toward Little Greenhouse. Nightfall began to descend. The clock in Reacher's mind read 8:15 in the evening. The fog had completely swallowed Market Basin. Visibility dropped below 5 meters. The gas streetlights emitted a pale, weak yellow glow, hovering in the air like sickly eyes. Reacher walked toward the Little Greenhouse. He chose the shortcut through the old warehouse area near the riverbank. The cobblestone path was slippery. The air was thick with the smell of mold and stagnant river water. He heard footsteps, not one person, 4 people. Heavy shoe soles thudded on the stones. The rhythm was uneven, not military. Not patrol police, they were civilians. Those trying to move stealthily but failing due to lack of skill and excess aggression. Reacher stopped. He stood in the shadow of a tall brick wall, right next to a distinctive red British phone booth. 4 shadows emerged from the mist. They wore thick parka jackets and hooded sweatshirts. Local hooligans, big, noisy. The smell of cheap beer and hand-rolled cigarettes was overpowering. Their weapons were not guns. They were cricket bats, thick, flat, heavy wooden sticks. A solid hit could shatter a skull. The largest one led the group. He tapped the bat rhythmically against his left palm. Thud, thud. "You're on the wrong path, American," he said. His slurred voice carried a Cockney accent, deliberately mimicking the movies. "The toll here is expensive. It could cost you a leg. Or 2. Reacher said nothing. He relaxed his shoulders. His hands hung loosely at his sides. He observed 4 opponents. A narrow space. The wet pavement. The leader stood 2 meters away from him. The other 3 lined up behind, blocking his escape. A basic encirclement tactic, but they made a mistake. They stood too close together. The cricket bat needed space to swing. In this narrow alley, they would hinder each other. "I'm talking to you," the leader growled, taking a step forward. He raised the bat high. Reacher moved. He did not step back. He charged straight into the strike zone. As the bat began to descend, it had not yet reached maximum speed. That was physics. The centrifugal force was weakest near the pivot point. Reacher raised his left hand, blocking the swinging arm of the bat. At the same time, he threw his right hand, a punch directly into the throat. Not to the face is hard bone, the throat is soft cartilage. Gah! A choking sound erupted. The leader dropped the bat, clutching his neck, eyes rolling back. He collapsed, gasping for air, but his trachea was crushed. Reacher caught the cricket bat before it hit the ground. Now he had a weapon. The other three froze. The hesitation lasted 1 second. 1 second was more than enough. Reacher turned. He wielded the bat like a long sword. He thrust the end of the bat hard into the stomach of the nearest guy. The hard edge jabbed deep into the guy's gut. He doubled over like a boiled shrimp, vomiting onto the pavement. The last two panicked. They charged in, simultaneously swinging their bats wildly. Reacher stepped back to the left, using the phone booth as a shield to cover one side. The third man swung his bat. It struck the metal frame of the phone booth. Clang! The sound of metal clashing was deafening. His arm went numb from the recoil. Reacher swung back. He aimed for the knee, a large target, difficult to defend. The willow bat collided with the kneecap. A crisp crack echoed in the alley. The third man crumpled to the ground, letting out a scream of pain that tore through the stillness of the night. The fourth man, the last one, stood frozen. He looked at his three companions. One was gasping for breath, one was vomiting, and one was clutching a severed leg. He looked at Reacher. Reacher stood there, his breathing steady. He held the cricket bat in one hand, nonchalant, as if it were a toy. The rain began to fall, mixing with the blood on the cobblestone street. "Go," Reacher said. The last man dropped his bat to the ground. He turned and ran. He slipped, fell hard, then scrambled to his feet and disappeared into the thick fog. Reacher threw the cricket bat into the bushes by the roadside. He adjusted his coat collar. He checked his joints. No scratches, no bruises. The clock in his head reported 8:17. The entire incident had unfolded in less than 20 seconds. Reacher stepped over the moaning bodies on the ground. He did not call the police. It was unnecessary. The police here were useless, and the hospital was 10 miles away. They would either crawl away or lie there reflecting on their poor life choices. He continued toward the little green house. The night grew quiet again. Only the sound of rain pattering on the corrugated roof of the shed remained. The spring had sprung. The warning had been sent back. Now was the time for the conclusion. 8:45 in the evening. Dr. Jacob Tanner's office reeked of brandy and fear. He stood by the window looking out at the thick fog swallowing the town. His right hand held a glass of liquor. His pale fingers gripped the rim of the crystal glass tightly. The amber liquid swayed, threatening to spill over with the uncontrollable tremors of his body. The phone on the desk rang. The classic piercing ring shattered the silence of the wood-paneled room. Tanner jumped. The liquor splashed onto his cashmere sweater. He cursed under his breath, set the glass down, and picked up the receiver. "Speak," he whispered. On the other end was heavy breathing, the sound of suppressed painful moans, and the rain. He is a monster." A hoarse voice came through. It was the leader of the hooligan group. "He crushed my throat. Jimmy's leg is broken. It's all broken." "Where is he?" Tanner asked, his voice hissing through clenched teeth. "I don't know." He was heading toward the old lady's house. "We couldn't stop him. He is not normal. He moves like a machine." A long beep sounded. The other man had hung up or had passed out. Tanner slowly placed the receiver down. He felt a chill run down his spine. Not the chill of the British fog. It was the chill of death breathing down his neck. He turned around. Tessa Arrow was sitting in the leather armchair opposite the fireplace. She was filing her nails, calm, cold, like a Siamese cat stalking a mouse. "Failed, did you?" she asked, not looking up. 4 men, Tanner said. 4 strong men with cricket bats. He took them all down in less than a minute. Broken bones, crushed trachea. Tessa stopped filing her nails. She lightly blew the nail dust into the air. "I told you," she said. "He is not a tourist. He is a lone wolf, and you just poked him with a rotten stick." Tanner walked to the bar, poured another full glass. He drank it down in one go. "We have to stop," he said, his voice trembling. He knows about phosphor. He has caught the scent here. He will call the police, or he will come here and snap my neck like he did with those thugs. The police here are useless." Tessa stood up. She stepped in front of Tanner, looking straight into his eyes. Her blue eyes were as sharp as a scalpel. "And he will not call the police. Men like him do not believe in the law. So what do we do? Run away?" "No," Tessa said. She reached up to adjust Tanner's tie, a gesture of false kindness that was chilling. "We do not run, we accelerate." "What do you mean old Emily has to die tonight, before Reacher can do anything?" "But he is there, he is protecting her," Tessa smiled, a smile devoid of warmth. "He is a man, Jacob. Men have weaknesses. He cannot guard forever. He needs to sleep. He needs to use the bathroom. And most importantly," she walked to the medicine cabinet in the corner of the room, unlocking it with a tiny key taken from her purse. She pulled out a small brown glass vial containing pale yellow capsules. "We do not need to enter the house to kill her. She will kill herself." Tessa tossed the vial to Tanner. He caught it reflexively. "What is this auntie's liver tonic? You prescribed it for her last week, remember? She takes it every night before bed, regular as clockwork." Tanner looked at the vial. "I know, but this is just harmless placebo." "That is the old vial," Tessa said. "I just swapped it out this morning when Laura went to the market. Each capsule contains 50 milligrams of pure white phosphorus, enough to burn the liver of an elephant." Tanner stared at the vial as if it were a grenade with the pin pulled. "She will take it tonight," Tessa said, her voice soothing. "And by tomorrow morning she will die of acute liver failure. No blood, no signs of violence. Reacher can stand guard outside the door all night, but he cannot stop her from taking the medicine prescribed by her own doctor." Tanner swallowed hard. He looked at the vial, then at Tessa. "What about Reacher? Let him guard the corpse," Tessa said. "When she dies, he will be the only suspect at the scene. A violent drifter, a wealthy old woman dying suddenly. The sheriff will be more than happy to throw him in jail for us." Tanner nodded slowly. The fear was still there, but greed had begun to overpower it. "All right," he said. "Tonight." Tessa gently patted his cheek. "Good boy. Now have another drink. You look too pale." 9:15. Outside, the fog was so thick it swallowed the moonlight. The trap had been set, not with barbed wire but with trust. Mrs. Emily believed in the doctor's medicine, and that trust would kill her. 10:42 at night. Little Green House was engulfed in the silence of a grave. Reacher sat in the velvet armchair facing the fireplace. The coal in the stove had burned out, leaving only a cold layer of gray ash. He did not turn on the light. The darkness was an ally. In the dark, the attacker had to fumble, while the defender only needed to listen. Reacher's breath was slow and deep, a heart rate of 50. Upstairs, Mrs. Emily's footsteps echoed. Slow, limping, she was preparing for bed. Reacher heard the sound of water running from the sink, the sound of a toothbrush scraping against a porcelain cup, the everyday sounds of a life about to end. Then he heard the clinking, glass colliding with marble. Reacher stood up. He moved out of the living room, ascending the stairs. He made no noise. The oak steps that once creaked under Mrs. Emily's feet now lay silent beneath his size 47 rubber soles. Mrs. Emily's bedroom door was ajar. A strip of yellow light spilled into the hallway. Reacher pushed the door open. Mrs. Emily was standing in front of the vanity. She wore a cream silk nightgown draped in a woolen robe. In her hand was a glass of water. The other hand held a small brown bottle of medicine. She was pouring a capsule into her palm. "Don't take it," Reacher said. Mrs. Emily jumped. The pill fell to the floor, rolling on the carpet. "Oh my God, you scared me to death," she said, hand on her chest. "This is just a liver supplement. Dr. Tanner prescribed it. I have to take it every night." Reacher stepped forward. He picked up the capsule. Pale yellow, hard gelatin shell, standard size. It looked completely harmless, but Reacher did not trust appearances. He believed in physics and chemistry. He brought the pill to his nose. The gelatin was odorless. Herbal liver supplements usually had a grassy or rooty smell. This pill had a different scent. very faint, almost undetectable unless one's sense of smell had been through the battlefield. A pungent smell, a garlic scent, the smell of burning. "When did Tanner give you this jar?" Reacher asked. "I don't remember. I saw it on the table this morning. Laura must have brought it back from the clinic." Reacher looked at the medicine jar on the table. The label was brand new. He picked up a heavy crystal ashtray from the dressing table. He placed the capsule in it. "Step back," he commanded. "What are you going to do? Prove why you are still alive." Reacher pulled a small knife from his jacket pocket, the knife he had borrowed from the kitchen earlier. He used the tip of the knife to gently cut through the gelatin coating. The capsule shell separated. A waxy white powder revealed itself. Reacher waited. 1 second, 2 seconds. Oxygen in the air came into contact with the powder. A chemical reaction occurred immediately. Sizzle. A thin white smoke rose from the ashtray, accompanied by a small, eerie green flame. It crackled, emitting a strong garlic smell and the acrid scent of toxic chemicals. Mrs. Emily let out a short scream, covering her mouth. She stepped back, bumping into the wardrobe. Reacher watched the dancing blue flame. White phosphorus, a burning weapon, Class A poison. If Mrs. Emily swallowed this capsule, that flame would not burn in the ashtray. It would burn in her stomach. It would melt the mucosa, seep into the blood, and destroy the liver within 6 hours. A painful, brutal, and irreversible death. Mrs. Emily stammered, "Dr. Tanner, he wants to kill me. He and your grandchildren," Reacher said. He poured a glass of water into the ashtray to extinguish the flame. White smoke billowed up, while she whispered, tears streaming down. "I held Jacob when he first came here. I gave Charlie money for college. Why? Because 5,000 pounds is not enough for greed," Reacher said. He picked up the medicine jar, tightening the lid. "Evidence. They didn't need to break into the house tonight," he said, his voice cold. "They broke in this morning, with this jar. They are waiting for you to die by tomorrow morning." Reacher looked at the clock in his mind. 5 minutes to 11. The defensive plan had changed. He was no longer the protector. The enemy had escalated. They had used chemical weapons. They had crossed the red line. Reacher turned to Mrs. Emily. She was trembling, looking a decade older in just a few minutes. "Pack your things," Reacher ordered. "Where to get out of here? Right now. I will take you to a safe place." "What about you?" Reacher looked out the window where the pitch-black night was enveloping Market Basin. "I have an appointment with the doctor," he said. "I need to get him a new prescription." Reacher turned off the bedroom light. Darkness returned, but this time it carried a sense of anger. The hunting mode had been activated. 11:30 at night. Reacher led Mrs. Emily out the back gate of Little Green House. The thick fog was like wet cotton, swallowing every sound. Mrs. Emily held the dog Bob tightly in her arms, her body shaking in waves. She did not ask where they were going. She had seen the green flame in the ashtray. Fear had replaced all questions. A gray Ford Focus parked with its lights off at the hidden corner of the intersection. The car door opened. D.I. Hayes stepped out. She wore a bulletproof vest over her trench coat. Her hand rested on the grip of the handgun at her waist. "You're right," Hayes said, looking at the trembling Mrs. Emily. "Tanner bought a plane ticket to Greece for tomorrow morning. One way." "Take her back to the station," Reacher said. "Lock the door. Don't let anyone in, not even the sheriff." "What about you?" "I'm going for a health check." Hayes looked at him. She understood. She did not try to stop him. She helped Mrs. Emily into the car. The car rolled away, disappearing into the night. Reacher stood alone. He turned, heading toward Tanner's clinic. 11:45. The clinic was shrouded in darkness. The front door was locked. The alarm system flashed red lights. Reacher did not go through the front door. He circled around to the back, climbed onto the metal trash can, and grabbed the ledge of the second-floor window. The window was unlocked. A typical carelessness of the arrogant. Reacher crawled inside. The chemical smell was stronger than during the day. The smell of alcohol, the smell of ether, and the acrid scent of burnt garlic. He turned on the tiny flashlight he had taken from Mrs. Emily's pocket. The second floor was the living area. The bed was messy, clothes were strewn about. A suitcase lay wide open on the floor, stuffed with cash and passports. Tanner was preparing to flee. Reacher went down the stairs. The wooden floor creaked. He adjusted his center of gravity, stepping onto the edge of the stair where the wood was the hardest. Not a sound. The first floor, the clinic. Reacher passed through the waiting room, heading straight for the door leading down to the basement. The door was made of steel, thick with an electronic lock. Reacher did not hack the lock. He was not a tech guy. He searched for the main circuit breaker on the wall. He cut the power. The electronic lock was disabled. The magnetic bolt released. Click! Reacher opened the door. A foul odor rushed up. Not the smell of chemicals, the smell of death. Reacher stepped down. The basement was spacious, converted into a makeshift laboratory. Test tubes, distillation flasks, bags of nitrate fertilizer stacked on top of each other, and brown bottles identical to Mrs. Emily's medicine bottles. This was not a clinic. This was a small-scale chemical weapons manufacturing facility. Tanner did not just kill Mrs. Emily for her fortune. He was selling white phosphorus on the black market. In the middle of the room, under the cold white light of the flashlight, there was a chair, and there was someone sitting in it. It was Laura Lawton, the housekeeper. The girl sat with her head drooped onto her chest. Her hands were bound behind the chair with industrial tape. Reacher placed his hand on her neck. Cold. No pulse. Her throat was bruised. The hyoid bone was broken. A deep mark was etched into her flesh. Rope, or piano wire, the same type of wire used to trap Mrs. Emily on the stairs. Her eyes were wide open, staring blankly into the void. Reacher looked down at the floor. There was a shopping bag scattered around. Apples, bread, a bouquet of daisies. She had come home earlier than expected. She must have seen something she shouldn't have seen. Perhaps she saw Tessa switching the drugs, or saw Tanner packing the goods, and they killed her to cover their tracks. Reacher turned off the flashlight. Darkness enveloped the basement. Reacher stood still in the dark. He did not feel sadness. He did not feel pity. Those emotions were a luxury. He felt a coldness spreading in his chest. An absolute focus. Laura Lawton was the real silent witness. She died because she knew the truth. Reacher felt in his pocket. The vial of poison was still there. The dead drop had been established. An innocent person had died. The dead point has been established. An innocent person has died. The law has expired. Now is the time for the verdict. Reacher turned around and stepped up the stairs. He no longer walked on tiptoe. He took Tanner's phone from the desk. He had forgotten it in his haste. Reacher dialed the most recent number. Beep, beep. Are you done? Tessa Arrow's voice rang out. Is the maid completely dead? Reacher did not answer immediately. He let the silence linger for 3 seconds. Tessa, he said. His voice was deep like distant thunder. The other end fell silent. A breath was exhaled. Reacher, Laura is dead, Reacher said. Mrs. Emily is still alive, and I am holding the vial. What do you want? Tessa's voice trembled, but she still tried to sound tough. I want nothing at all. I just called to inform you. Inform me of what? That I am coming. Reacher hung up. He crushed the phone in his hand. The plastic shattered. The screen cracked open. He threw it against the wall. 12 o'clock midnight. A new day begins, and it will be the end of the Arrow family. 12:20 in the morning. The old shipyard lay on the eastern edge of Market Basin, where the river Thames widened into a stagnant pool full of reeds. Rusty cranes reached up into the pitch-black sky like the ribs of dead monsters. The rain fell heavier. The sound of rain hitting the tin roof of the main workshop created a noisy, chaotic sound, masking all footsteps. Inside the central sawmill, the yellowish, high-pressure lights cast down on the oil-stained concrete floor. Dr. Tanner paced back and forth. He had removed his cashmere coat. His white shirt was soaked with sweat clinging to his back. He held an old Webley revolver, his hand trembling violently. He is coming, Tanner muttered. He has found Laura's body. He knows everything. Tessa Arrow sat on a wooden crate smoking. The glowing cigarette burned red in the dim light. She maintained her calm demeanor, but her eyes kept darting toward the large door. "Shut up, Jacob," she hissed. "You're giving me a headache. Can't you hear what he said? He said he is coming. So what? We have guns. Charlie has a gun." Charlie Arrow hid behind a pile of oak planks. He held a 12-gauge double-barrel shotgun. His eyes were wide, staring into the pitch-black night outside the warehouse door. He had changed out of his tattered tweed suit into a moss-green hunting outfit. "I will blow his head off," Charlie said, his voice trembling with fear, "as soon as he steps through the door." "Focus," Tessa commanded. "He is not a ghost. He is a man. Men bleed." Outside 50 meters from the shipyard, Reacher stood still beneath the chassis of an abandoned truck. He was not in a hurry. The clock in his head reported 12:35. Reacher observed the target. A corrugated iron shed. The main door wide open. Light spilling out formed a bright golden trapezoid on the muddy ground. Anyone stepping into that light would be a target. Charlie Arrow was an idiot, but a 12-gauge did not need intelligence to kill. At a distance of 10 meters, the buckshot would tear everything apart. Reacher did not intend to step into the light. He looked up at the sky. The main power line leading into the shed ran across a rotting wooden pole 15 meters away from him. Reacher bent down. He picked up a stone, the size of a tennis ball, weighing about 300 grams. He moved. He circled around the side of the shed, following the shadows of the metal scrap piles. His footsteps synchronized with the rhythm of the falling rain. No strange sounds. He reached the base of the pole. Reacher looked up at the insulator at the top of the pole, 6 meters high. He calculated the trajectory, the force of the throw, the wind strength. Reacher swung his arm. The stone soared into the night. Crash. The insulator shattered. The power line snapped, falling down, brushing against the rain-soaked metal roof. Spark. A bright blue electric spark burst out. Inside the shed, the high-intensity light flickered once and then went out completely. Darkness descended. Suddenly. Absolutely. "What the hell is that?" Charlie shouted. He reflexively pulled the trigger. Boom! The explosion ripped through the night. The buckshot shredded the undefined space at the main door, but hit nothing. "Don't shoot!" Tessa screamed. "You're wasting bullets, you fool! Where is he?" "He cut the power," Tanner groaned. In the dense darkness of the warehouse, the three villains became blind. Their eyes had not yet adjusted, but Reacher was different. He had closed his eyes 10 seconds before throwing the stone to dilate his pupils. Now he was in his element. Reacher crawled through the broken glass of the side window of the warehouse. He landed softly like a black panther. The smell of diesel, the smell of rotting wood, the smell of gunpowder from the recent shot. He heard Charlie's gasping breath, the chattering of Tanner's teeth. The tables had turned. They were no longer the hunters, they were the prey, and the monster was in the lair with them. Reacher picked up a long iron bar from the ground. He tapped lightly on an empty barrel. Clang! The sound echoed throughout the warehouse, bouncing off the 4 metal walls, making it impossible for anyone to determine its source. Charlie turned, aiming his gun into the darkness on the left. Clang! This time the sound came from the right. Reacher moved. He did not attack immediately. He wanted fear to soften their bones first. "Charlie," Reacher said. His voice was low, echoing from all directions. "You have 1 bullet left. Don't miss." "Come out! Come out now!" Charlie shouted, spinning around the gun's muzzle, trembling. Reacher stood still behind a steel support column, only 3 meters away from Charlie. He waited. Panic is a kind of acid. It corrodes discipline. It corrodes accuracy. "Shoot!" Charlie Tanner yelled. "Shoot at the place where the voice is!" Charlie pulled the trigger for the second time. Bang! The flash from the muzzle lit up his twisted, terrified face for a tenth of a second. The bullet lodged into the far metal wall, creating dozens of holes for the moonlight to seep through. "Out of bullets," Reacher said. Now he stepped out from behind the steel column. No more guns. Only darkness and pure violence remained. Reacher charged. Charlie Arrow swung the shotgun. He held the barrel of the gun. He used the wooden stock as a club. A desperate move from an amateur. The gun weighed 3.5 pounds. It sliced through the air, creating a low, dull whine. The trajectory was at head level. Reacher did not retreat. To back down is to die. In the darkness, distance is life. The closer you get, the longer the weapon becomes useless. Reacher stepped forward. A long stride. He penetrated Charlie's inner circle. Charlie's gun arm swung around behind Reacher, striking nothingness. Reacher struck. His left hand grabbed the collar of Charlie's jacket. His right hand spread out stiff as ironwood. A slap with the palm, target chin. The force pushed Charlie's lower jaw back, crashing against his skull. His brain rattled. Charlie dropped the gun. He staggered. But Reacher was not done. The enemy is not fully neutralized until he cannot get back up. Reacher swung his right leg. A low kick, the rubber heel size .47 slammed directly into the side of Charlie's left knee. Crack. The sound of ligaments tearing and the patella shattering rang out clearly, drowning out the sound of rain falling on the tin roof. Charlie Arrow collapsed. He did not scream. The pain was too great for his vocal cords to constrict. He lay curled up on the filthy concrete floor, clutching the leg that had been bent at an unnatural angle. Reacher kicked the hunting gun away into the darkness. He turned his head to search. The sound of high heels pounding on the iron floor, breathing heavily. Tanner and Tessa had fled. They did not stay to help Charlie. Loyalty does not exist among the selfish. They were running up the metal stairs leading to the upper executive office, where there was an exit to a balcony overlooking the river. Reacher chased after them. The stairs shook under his weight. He reached the mezzanine hallway. A flash of lightning lit up the scene. Bang! A bullet whizzed past Reacher's ear, embedding itself in the steel column behind him. Clang! Reacher lunged to the left, hiding behind a tarpaulin-covered crate. Tessa Arrow had a gun. A small handgun? It could be a .22 caliber Beretta Bobcat or a Walther PPK. The kind of gun a woman usually hides in her purse. Short range, low stopping power, but enough to kill if it hits the eye or heart. "Don't come any closer," Tessa shouted. Her voice faltered, losing all the arrogance from earlier that afternoon. Reacher listened. The sound of a magazine being loaded. No, a semi-automatic does not need to be reloaded after each shot. But she wasn't firing again. She was saving ammunition. Or the gun was jammed. "You missed," Reacher said. His voice calmly echoed from behind the crate. "I'll blow your brains out. That Beretta only holds 7 rounds, Reacher said. "You fired 1. There are 6 left. You missed at a distance of 5 meters. Your hand is shaking. You'll miss the next 6 shots too." Silence. Reacher picked up a rusty bolt from the floor. He threw it towards the opposite wall. Clang! Tessa swung her gun towards the sound. Bang! Bang! 2 shots. 4 left. Reacher moved. He didn't charge straight at her. He climbed onto the pile of crates, gripping the steel beam of the ceiling. Tessa and Tanner were backing towards the balcony door. Below was the dark Thames River, the water rushing violently due to the heavy rain. "Jump," Tessa ordered Tanner. "Jump into the river and swim to the other side. The water is freezing. I can't swim well," Tanner whimpered. "Jump or die." Tessa aimed her gun into the darkness of the exit, her hand trembling violently. She didn't look up at the ceiling. No one looks up in a gunfight. That is a biological blind spot. Reacher let go of the steel beam. He fell. 113 pounds of weight in free fall. From a height of 3 meters, he didn't land on his feet. He landed with his whole body on the roof of the thin metal office cabin right behind them. Crash. The sound was like a bomb exploding. The metal roof collapsed. Dust flew everywhere. Tessa jumped, spinning around. She pulled the trigger in panic. Bang! The bullet ricocheted off the iron floor. 3 rounds left. But Reacher was right in front of her. He surged up from the pile of broken metal like a demon rising from hell. Tessa aimed the gun at his chest. A distance of 2 meters. Impossible to miss. Reacher looked into her eyes. He saw the murderous intent. She would pull the trigger. He did not have time to rush forward, but physics is always fair. Reacher kicked hard at the metal sheet beneath his feet. The sheet flipped up, striking Tessa's forearm. She staggered. The bullet's trajectory went awry. Bang! The bullet tore through the sleeve of Reacher's coat, leaving a burning scratch on his left forearm. Reacher did not feel pain. Adrenaline had blocked the nerve receptors. He stepped forward. Tessa pulled the trigger again. Click! The gun jammed. Reacher snatched the gun from her hand. He crushed it with one hand, then threw it into the dark river below. Tessa backed away, colliding with the balcony railing. Tanner had climbed over the railing. He looked at Reacher, then at the swirling water. He chose the water. He let go and jumped down. The sound of water splashing echoed, then was swallowed by the rain. Only Tessa Arrow remained. She stood with her back against the rusty iron railing. The river wind blew her wet blonde hair. She gasped for breath, her chest heaving. Reacher approached. "Out of bullets," he said. "No way to run." Tessa looked down at the river, then at Reacher. She smiled, a twisted smile. "You don't hit women, do you, Reacher?" Reacher looked at the blood on his sleeve. He gazed toward the town where Laura Lawton lay cold in the basement. "I don't hit women," Reacher said. "I punish murderers." He took another step. Tessa screamed, pulling a small dagger from her boot. She lunged at him. A final desperate attack. Reacher did not dodge. He caught her wrist. The clock in his head struck 12:55. It was time to end it. Tessa Arrow's wrist was small, delicate bones, prone to breaking. Reacher twisted gently. A purely mechanical motion. "Snap!" Tessa screamed. The dagger fell to the iron floor, bouncing once before, lying still. She buckled her knees, but Reacher still held her wrist tightly, pinning her against the railing. "You wouldn't dare!" Tessa hissed through clenched teeth, her face contorted in pain. "I am a woman. You don't kill women." Reacher looked at her. He saw the cruelty in those blue eyes. The cruelty that had killed Laura Lawton with a cold rope. "I won't kill you," Reacher said. He released his grip. Tessa lost her balance. She staggered backward. Her back slammed hard against the iron railing. The railing was rusty. It had endured the sun and rain of the Berkshire region for 50 years. It was not designed to withstand the impact of a panicking body. A tearing metallic sound rang out sharply. Clang! The weld broke apart. Tessa flailed. Her hands grasped at the air, trying to find something to hold on to. She looked at Reacher. A pleading gaze. Reacher stood still. He did not reach out. He did not move. He just observed. Gravity is a constant. It does not discriminate between genders. Tessa fell backward. She disappeared into the darkness below. A second later, splash. The sound of water splashing up. Then the dark Thames swallowed her whole. The strong current pulled her body toward the central drainage. Reacher stepped close to the broken edge of the railing. He looked down. No sign of Dr. Tanner. No sign of Tessa. The water temperature was about 4 degrees Celsius. The flow rate was 2 meters per second. At that temperature, thermal shock would occur within 60 seconds. Loss of mobility within 3 minutes. Drowning was certain for those without survival skills and wearing heavy winter clothing. The case was closed. No need for a court, no need for a jury. The river was the final verdict. Reacher turned away. He walked back to Charlie Arrow. The spoiled brat was still writhing on the concrete floor, clutching his shattered knee. He looked at Reacher approaching as if he were seeing death. Don't. Charlie stammered, tears and snot mingling with the dirt on his face. "I will give you money. I have money." Reacher bent down. He picked up the shotgun. He bent the barrel, removing 2 shells from the chamber. He threw the shells into the darkness. He grabbed Charlie by the collar, pulling him up to sit against the steel column. "You will live," Reacher said. "You will go to prison, and you will limp for the rest of your life." Charlie nodded vigorously, grateful for a favor he did not deserve. Reacher stood up straight. He listened. The sound of a siren, distant, echoing from the direction of the highway. The sound of tires screeching on gravel. The red and blue headlights began to sweep through the gaps of the warehouse. Hayes had arrived. The clock in Reacher's mind read 1:15 in the morning. He checked himself. The bullet scratch on his left forearm had stopped bleeding. His jacket was torn. His shoes were muddy. He did not need to stay to explain. The scene was clear. A guy with a broken leg. 2 missing under the river. A drug lab. Hayes was smart enough to write a report. Reacher walked toward the back door of the warehouse where darkness still reigned. He blended into the night, leaving the flashing police lights behind. 2:30 in the morning. Reacher stood in the public restroom outside the Market Basin train station. The fluorescent light on the ceiling flickered, buzzing like a dying fly. He turned on the faucet. The water was icy cold. Reacher plunged both hands under the stream. He scrubbed. Dried blood dissolved. The swirling water in the porcelain basin turned pale pink, then dark red, then clear again. He splashed water on his face. The coldness eased the tension in his facial muscles. He looked in the mirror. A long scratch on his left cheek from the thorn bushes earlier. A tear in his jacket. The eyes in the mirror remained calm. The pupils had shrunk to normal size. The adrenaline storm had passed. Now was the time for physical fatigue. His body demanded rest and calories. Reacher turned off the water. He did not use the hand dryer. Noisy. He wiped his hands on his pants. He stepped outside. The platform was deserted. The first train to London would depart at 5:15. Still nearly 3 hours to go. Reacher sat down on a long wooden bench under the awning. He leaned back against the brick wall, stretching his legs. He closed his eyes, putting his body into a short hibernation state. The sound of an engine. Reacher opened his eyes. No need to move his head. A gray Ford Focus pulled up in front of the station. The headlights turned off. Hayes stepped out. She looked worn out. Wet hair stuck to her forehead. The trench coat was muddy, but the gun had been put away. She walked over, sitting at the other end of the bench, 1 meter away from Reacher. The minimum social distance. She placed 2 paper coffee cups on the seat in between the two of them. "Black coffee," she said. "Bought it at the gas station. It's terrible." Reacher took 1 cup. The plastic lid was hot. He opened the lid and took a sip. Bitter, burnt, but hot. "Good," he said. "The water police are retrieving the bodies," Hayes said, looking into the night. "The current is strong. They might drift all the way to the mouth of the river." "Saves on burial costs," Reacher replied. "Charlie Arrow is in the police hospital. He has confessed everything about the drug lab, about the trap on the stairs, about Laura." Reacher nodded. He was not surprised. Charlie was weak. He would betray anyone to lighten his charges. "What about Emily?" Reacher asked. "She's safe. I've assigned an officer to watch over her. She'll be fine. She's a tough one." Hayes turned to look at Reacher. "I have to write a report, Reacher." "Go ahead and write." "What should I write about you? An American drifter shows up, dismantles a drug gang, throws 2 people into the river, then disappears. Write that they took each other out," Reacher said. "Internal conflict, uneven shares. Charlie shooting wildly. Tanner and Tessa fell into the river while trying to escape." "I wasn't there." "You weren't there," Hayes repeated, her voice sarcastic. "But the scene is full of size 47 footprints. Many people wear size 47 shoes." Hayes fell silent. She drank her coffee. She knew she wouldn't catch him. She knew the law couldn't deal with people like Tanner and Tessa quickly. "Thank you," she said softly. Reacher did not respond. He finished his cup of coffee. "Where are you planning to go, London?" "Then the airport. Back to America. Back to somewhere." Hayes stood up. She brushed the dust off her coat. "The earliest train is a long way off. I can give you a ride back to the station. There's heating. There are cushioned seats." "I'm fine here," Reacher said. Hayes looked at him one last time, a complex look. Respect, regret, and relief at seeing him about to leave. "All right. Goodbye, Jack Reacher." "Goodbye, Hayes." She turned her back and walked towards the car. Reacher watched the Ford Focus drive away. The red taillights faded into the morning mist. He was left alone once more.